Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday evening discussion on the summer of love. So I was just asking Tom, why did he go to Matthew 17, where it talks about the transfiguration and the disciples going up? Because I don't know, it mushroomed for me. That was the big aha. So Tom, take it away.
Well, I'm glad it was an aha. That's good. Yeah, really, the Lord gave that to me. I don't know, sometime Sunday morning, fairly early. Usually I get up and drink coffee when it's quiet and think about things and let Him talk to me. Really, it was in the context of Him talking to me that, you know, we've been talking about First Corinthians in love, and near the end of that chapter, it talks about maturity, and maturity can be a slippery slope, and we're probably going to talk about that more in the coming weeks, and that, what maturity is and what maturity is not. What it is not, very briefly, is it's not your ability to exercise your own self-control. Okay, it's not exercise. It's not your ability to have enough strength on your own to obey the rules, obey the laws. That is not maturity. That's not what I'm talking about. Really, the context that I was talking about maturity in is knowing God, because that in First John is second of two requirements that's necessary to love others. First, you got to be born of God, which gives you the potential, as I talked about, and then second, you have to know God, which includes hearing His voice. So I was thinking about, well, where do the scriptures talk about hearing Jesus's voice? And we heard it from God's own lips on the Mount of Transfiguration. And it also reinforced that because Moses and Elijah were there, Moses was representing the law, the commandments. Elijah was representing the prophets, which up until that time was how people heard from God, was basically through the prophets, and then when the last of the Old Testament prophets, John the Baptist, comes on the scene, he says, look, a new time's coming, that the relationship between God and mankind is going to change. So listen up and pay attention. And, part of that relationship is that each of us has the ability to hear from God. So, from God's own lips on the Mount of Transfiguration, He said, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. In other words, stop paying attention to the law, stop paying attention to the prophets, and listen to Him. Listen to Him. And in my mind, if God says that we should listen to Him, then we obviously are able to hear His voice individually, and we don't need to go through some holy man or, whatever. We need to break down all those religious ideas. And that recalled to my mind a discussion that we had a few weeks ago when Jim brought up a very salient point, was that, when Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice, I know them and they follow me. He was talking about, it didn't say my lambs hear my voice, the immature, but the adult sheep hear my voice. And I think there's a connection there between that and what Paul was talking about, as far as when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I thought as a child, I reasoned as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. So that's kind of the full circle of where I was going with all of that. And I don't know if I bit off too much for one Sunday or not, but nonetheless, that's where it went.
No, I mean, I listened to the whole thing, but I couldn't get away from this because, here you got these disciples that are in competition with each other from the word go. And He picks a certain few to come up this mountain with Him, so how does that, how does that apply to us? Well, let me just continue the story. Let me
And I took Matthew, but there's also Luke and Mark talk about it as well.
Right. I just wanted to stay on point. the thing that really hit me was how relevant that is to our relationship today. Up until this point, the disciples were living on miracles and of Jesus saying who he was. He'd done a couple of miracles in their presence, and they were believing. But it lines up with what you're saying as far as knowing God and knowing God. Could you imagine the look on their face when Jesus' face was as bright as the sun? I mean, that would be enough discussion for the rest of my life. But then Moses shows up, who like you said, is the Torah. It's Mr. Torah, and then Elijah, and it's like, not only did they show up, but it was quite evident from their standpoint, Jesus had a relationship with them, and then this is after they've climbed a mountain. I don't know, was it in the night? I think he came and got them and told them to come with him. But anyway, irrelevant.
I think it was that mountain right behind me, actually, was it?
So imagine it's that one, right? And they go to the peak.
Yeah, that one's pretty steep. I couldn't get up it.
They're exhausted. You know what I mean? They're exhausted. They're probably a little bit hungry. They're, so they're not maybe walking up this mountain dismantled a few barriers, so to speak, And then all these signs and wonders happen right in front of them, and there is zero denying. And then to the cherry on the cake, God shows up and talks. I mean, I put myself in their shoes this afternoon, and then Jesus says, "Oh, by the way, boys, don't say nothing."
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I forgot to mention that. That's very true.
What? Oh my God, I want to run down that mountain, scream it from the rooftops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it solidifies who he is. Therefore, it solidifies who I am in him. And that's what gives us the ability to love. I mean, I'm kind of jumping the gun, but I think the fact that they climbed the mountain just as they were, there was no, like you're saying, back in the day, one person could go into the Holy of Holies. The climate there was very legalistic, not just Jewish law, but Roman law. So here they are coming out of this law, coming out of this, actually still living in it. I'm sure they got nervous working on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do nothing. 6 o'clock, boom, you're done. And here they are climbing this mountain. They're probably filthy, probably, hungry, not at their best. Judging from some of the rest of the reports, they were probably bitching and moaning to each other. Whose idea was it to do this? Especially if it was a mountain like the one behind you. And then they literally entered the Holy of Holies when they got to the top of that mountain. And it's like, come as you are. You don't have to clean up. You're in the presence of God. That is so out of their comfort zone. It's so out of their realm of thinking. It doesn't even comprehend. It's like, well, I'm not a high priest. I guarantee you their voice was going, well, I'm not a high priest. How can I be in the presence of God? Well, shit, maybe what Jesus is saying is true. And then why did he pick those three? Was it three? I think it was three.
Yeah.
And one of them left his brother behind. You know, they left his. Hang on, I'll find it here. Peter, James, and John, the brother of. Oh, it was two brothers, the brother of James,
right.
and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking to Jesus. I mean, talk about pull the rug out.
Well, that's why I said to really appreciate this, you got to be Jewish for a minute. You got to really put yourself in their place. I mean, based on the conditioning they've lived under all their lives, and that's been handed down for 42 generations or something like that. You know, it's like,
yeah.
Whoa!
I knew a guy that was out of his synagogue. He was picked to go to Jerusalem and bring back a Torah, the first 5 books, and this was better than winning the lottery. It was such a high calling. I mean, it was unbelievable. But then again, look at how we come to Christ in the beginning. We've got all these legal systems, all these expectations, all this baggage, and kind of like them going to the top of this mountain. You know, I mean, seek ye first the kingdom of God. And for the first 6 months, it's but. Well, still doing that. I don't know. Maybe it's to be continued, but that's what.
Well, and you know, take heart, because look at what they did. The first thing they did is they broke religious, right? They were going to serve Jesus and Moses and Elijah by building them a house. You know, that's the first thing they wanted to do. What am I going to do for God?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to serve Him? You know, so they broke religious,
which is kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Anyway, you know, when he pulls you out of some monumental issue that you're dealing with, you feel like you owe him.
Yeah.
I mean, they wanted to build him a shelter, and he wasn't interested. It was for them to see it.
Right.
Just awesome, man. Awesome.
You know, and I don't know from their mindset. Maybe one of you guys have a better idea of this, but where they wanted, you know, the word in the King James was a tabernacle, so it was just like that same word they used back in the books of Moses when they built, like you were talking about, the Ark of the Covenant and the holy place and all that. Those were tabernacles. They were temporary portable structures, you know. So I think there probably was a connection there too, but I don't really have any insight on it at this point.
Well, was it every time like a miracle happened, didn't they build a monument or an altar to it?
Right. Commemorate it.
To commemorate it. So I mean, like you say, they're doing what comes natural to them.
Right.
But honestly, you can't really blame them, because I don't know what I would do if that happened to me. You know what I'm saying? I can say, oh yeah, praise the Lord, you know, that'd be wonderful, you know, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd still be on top of the mountain, especially when God says, take notice here, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. And you're going, what? You know?
Right. You know, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's why, at least with me, God's never put, you know, a neon sign in the sky, never shown me a miracle that I'm aware of, just because it may be my own tendency would be to break religious. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you know, the flesh is religious. That conditioning is religious. You know, 2 and 2 is 4. This is out of that realm. You know, and I mean, think about. Jesus knew who he was talking to. Don't tell anybody. It's not time. That's another mystery. I'm not able to explain why he said that at this point. Maybe one of you guys
explain any of it. I mean, honestly, he could have got up on the mountain by himself and had some quiet time, you know. But he took them with him, and he picked these 3 out of the 12. Can you imagine? I'd be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they supposedly they didn't tell anybody, but I bet they did. I bet they did. I mean, well, they're good. They've been under the law their whole life. Maybe they're good at keeping secrets. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That is an excellent point.
I'm surprised they could even talk after all of that. I mean, when Paul met Jesus, he couldn't see after it.
Right. Yeah. That's a good. Yeah. Anyway, it just that's what jumped off for me with the whole thing.
You know that in the New International Version, it just simply says build a shelter.
Yeah.
Just a shelter. And I'm looking. I went to my Schofield Bible to see if there was any notes for verse 4, and there's nothing for verse 4 as far as notes at the bottom explaining anything. And the note on the this is my the Ryrie Study Bible simply says that they wanted to build shelters for the three of them, and I was wondering, because I kept reading it and I've read it over several times now, how did they know who those people were? I guess Jesus told them.
Another good question. Doesn't say.
You see what I'm saying? Because for some reason, these guys that lived, 1,000 years before or 500, whatever it was, years before, they knew who they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was no photographers that took their
and I don't think they came with name tags.
Hi, my name is Moses. Hi, Moses.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, right. The whole crowd goes, "Hi,
my name is Moses, and I wrote part of the Bible. Hi, Moses."
Yeah. But I kept thinking, how in the world did they even know who they were? And then. And Martin, I couldn't help but think when you were just talking that everything that you just said, and I'm going to try to say this right, is a shining example of what Christ did to you and me, to us, from birth to salvation to now. He took those 3 because, and I think he picked them because he, and I'm just guessing, they were, he knew their hearts, he knew their faith, he knew their minds. And Jesus, even though they fell on their faces and he told them, get up, don't be afraid, they could handle this, and maybe the others couldn't. And with the hierarchy going on between the 12 of them, I think you said this, Martin, but I can't even imagine what was going on down below.
Well,
those 3, those 3 are out. Yeah, because I guess Jesus is picked now.
Well, think of this, perhaps, just perhaps, maybe these 3 were the flakiest of the bunch.
And that's why he took them.
Jesus was busting the other ones.
Oh,
the last will be first. First will be last.
First will be last. Oh, I like
maybe these 3 wouldn't shut up, and they were the biggest pains in the arses.
We made them hoof it up that hill.
Yeah. So he made him hump up a 5-mile mountain. Yeah. And by the way, boys.
And
when we get up there, Moses is going to give us these stone tablets. You're going to have to carry him back down.
Right. And soon after, he has a conversation with, I think it was after this, he has the conversation with Peter. Do you love me? You'll deny me 3 times?
Yeah, I don't know how much later that was.
Right, but
chronologically, but
but you see what I'm saying? I mean, that's
yeah.
So here
he tell you maybe go up that mountain in the dark.
Yeah. And so here's these three, you know, do you love me? Okay, come with me. Yeah, well, of course we love you. You know,
Yeah,
what do
there's
you
all
want me
kinds
to
of
do?
possibilities here.
So what do you want me to do? Yes, I'll go with you. And then this happens, and what do? Right back to doing something again.
Mm-hmm.
Let me build you a shelter. Let me, you know, so you guys are safe. What? Wait a minute. You just saw this happen, and you're going to build something to make them safe? You know, because if it was just simply the word for shelter, and that's all it was, I know the King James says tabernacle, but if they truly meant just a shelter, not for us, just for you, you know, because of who you are. And I'm with Martin. How in the world could they even speak? God
It's in, I
has,
mean, if you look at the comments on the right, Mike's there, and Peggy, and they're saying, you know, it's a supernatural, it's a divine revelation.
yeah,
Think about the times in your life where God showed up. I know in my life there was never any doubt who it was. It was Him. You know, it was the Holy Spirit. It was because there was no fear. There was no. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, when you read this and they're going, "Oh, you know, we shouldn't be here."
Yeah.
You're talking. This wasn't happening in their head. They were physically seeing this.
Right.
You know what I mean? They were seeing this change. They were seeing a conversation between Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. You know, I think, you know, the Micah and Peggy are right. It was a God thing. It was a divine revelation, and they're going, "Shit, that's Moses." You know, that looks, the way that guy's talking, that could be Elijah. You know, because it's all written down. You know, and they know the Torah inside and out.
Sure.
Because that's the mark of a good Jew. You know. But how does that apply to us here and now? Jim?
Well, what jumps off at me is the fact that he picked those three specifically. You got to ask the question why. We don't have the answer, but probably later on in their ministry, Peter, James, and John, the books that they wrote, and I'm thinking that they didn't know what was up. They were just going because he said, "Come on, let's go," and he let them up. So, and of course, when he's transfigured, now he's chose to show them a deeper revelation of him and the reality of what's really going on. I mean, can you imagine? Even if you don't know who it is, I don't know how they know who it is, and because it says that, you know, it's good for us to be here. Let us make tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. How did they know who it was? Unless maybe there was pictures of, well, I think somebody, artist or something, had pictures of what? No, not a camera picture.
Yeah, I know.
Portrait.
A portrait. Somehow they had to. Right? But my next question was, why the hell you want to build a house for him? Why do you want to? Why would you want to do that? If I was standing there seeing that wouldn't be the first thing I would think of. I mean, but I'm not coming from where they're coming from either. But maybe that's what they did back then. I don't know. I know they built a monument or momentum thing. Every time there was a miracle done or something, they built the rock little statue. So every time they walked past it, they would remember God when he came through for their life at that time. So anyway, So while he was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed him, and a voice came out of the cloud. Of course, it was God the Father. And when his disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. Now, picture that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're fine hanging out with Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. And then all of a sudden, God the Father shows up and they're scared shitless, falling on their face. Why? Why is that?
Why then?
So,
Well, wait a minute. I might have an answer to that. Maybe. Remember, you got to be Jewish, that when Moses went up Mount Sinai, he only could go by himself, and he was given strict instructions to tell them, don't even touch the mountain or you'll die. I mean, and then they saw the fireworks up on that mountain, and then Moses' face glowing when he came back down. So that could be why they were like, "Oh, here we go. We're on holy ground here. We're gonna get fried." So I mean, I'll let you go back, but I think maybe that's
So of course Jesus came and touched them and said, "Arise, don't be afraid." So he had to fix it. But I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I just had that little. You know how it is. You don't want to lose it.
So
I made you lose yours.
Here's the other thing, that now that the three that saw that happen, okay, first of all, the other 11, 10, 9, the other 9 are probably back there wondering where the hell are they going, because they were in competition with each other. It's probably natural that was happening.
Why them? Why not us?
But then now that these 3 that happened, when they get back, what kind of attitude do they have? Probably a little bit puffed up, right?
Yeah.
And now
we're not allowed to tell you.
Okay, so then the Lord reminded me of a lot of times that I've experienced it. I've heard it from other people before I experienced it for myself, and once I experienced it for myself, it became true and real. And it's when God blesses you with he opens your eyes to see something, or he grows you up, matures you and grows you up, and you're changing in front of all your peers. God's blessing you, and they're seeing it, and then they take it personal. They're not. They don't like you. It causes a problem. So it's Martin and I. We say every now and then, oh crap.
That's what you say?
I go a little bit further, but
I lost it.
it'll come back.
I got burned out on computer today. I spent all day and I got everything done but one thing. And I tried to do it. I'm one of the 3 billion that got their information hacked or whatever from that.
Oh.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Phone number, address, social security number, all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to do everything I can now to prevent anything in the future.
Right.
Freezing my accounts and all that. I got everything done but one. And I did everything they told me to do at least 10 times. And I get done, it goes, nope, can't find you. Really? So it's just, it blew my mind. It was frustrating.
I've had 2 of those days. Both times I ended up getting new computers because I was so afraid of what might have, if they got access to it or whatever, it got back in there again or whatever. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, having to close down all your accounts and put freezes on your credit and all that. It's terrible. It's a shame that such a good thing gets used in such a bad.
So you remember the story of the prodigal, where the younger one wasted all of his inheritance. He got it early and went and blew it.
Sure.
Yeah.
When he came back, the father threw a big ass party for him.
Mm-hmm.
And the older brother got pissed off.
Yep.
We call it the older brother syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So as we grow and mature in the Lord, and God is blessing us with divine revelation of who He is and who He's made us to be. When we go back, like, the rehabs that we're sharing in, we're sharing it with the clients because to try to prepare them when they go back to their families or whatever, that dynamic,
Right.
they're not the same person. So everybody around them is going to automatically try to make them like they were so that they don't have to change.
Mm-hmm.
So, the bombshell theory, you can't change another person by direct action. You can only change yourself with God's help. And other people have a tendency to change in reaction to your change. So it drops a bomb. I can imagine when these three guys got back, what happened. There was older brother syndrome going on. There was, who knows? They could have even been fist fighting, because the flesh is always in competition. Always wants the center of attention.
And another side of it was they just got so immersed in what happened.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say a word. They weren't capable of talking because they just considering what they just saw.
Yeah, and the others would have picked up on that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right?
Exactly. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
The others would have spotted it, whether they were, mouthing it off. But just talking for myself, I think if the first time I ever saw a miracle, it blew me away, and I was speechless. And then there was a guy one time doing a fifth step. At the time we called it doing their houses, and he was. It took me 4 days to get over it. It was so graphic and so. Well, look at me. I'm still not over it. It's like, and this was 10 years ago, maybe. Anyway, this guy tells his story, and it took 2 days, 2 mornings of 2-hour classes. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. And then it got bad again. And just an absolute nightmare anyway. By the second day, Jesus showed up and started talking to this guy. And he was talking to him the night of the first day too. This guy was coming up to me and Jim after, thanking us for the opportunity. And we're going, no, man, thank you. And I was speechless after that. We just looked at each other and went, because God came in and did for him what he couldn't do for himself. He healed him of all the resentment, all the hatred, all the bitterness. And all I was doing there was sitting there watching this guy unload. And the Lord did a number on this guy. It was an absolute miracle.
And he knew he was a brand new person.
He knew he was a brand new creation.
A brand new future. It was just such an excitement. It's like all of that just was gone, and he had his whole life ahead of him.
Yeah, like the slate was wiped clean.
Yeah.
Brand new creation. And that's what he was beaming when he was finished. Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. And we were like, unbelievable. So that's this little, this thing. But seeing Jesus and then hearing God, I don't know, man. It would change my life. It would change my life. Anyway, Frank, how you doing, buddy?
Hey,
Good.
I had to take it off mute. Better. How you doing?
Good, man. Good.
Sorry, I'm a little late. It's just works
No
out
worries.
like that somehow.
No worries. Did you hear what we were talking about?
I missed that. You were talking about something that transpired with one of the
Yeah,
clients.
Matthew 17. We're talking about when the three disciples went up the mountain with Jesus, and Jesus, the transfiguration. Then Jesus standing there talking to Moses and Elijah, and how being in the presence of such a miracle, why them? What was their reaction? What would your reaction be? And I mean, I just think to bring it into context with what Tom's talking about, the summer of love and loving others, I think it takes a
Maturity.
absolutely good word. But it takes a God moment like that to show us who He is and therefore who we are, and that's the beginning of the renewing of our mind. It's like we've been saying. What God says about us as a new creation is a done deal. We just got to catch up and start believing it, and this is how it happens.
You could say that those three, before they went up on that mountain,
Mm-hmm.
spoke as a child, understood as a child, right?
Absolutely.
They came down off that mountain. See,
Yeah.
the
I
maturity.
think I would pay more attention to what Jesus was saying. If I was in the back of the 12 disciples, blowing a paper spitball or something like that. But now when he's talking, I think I pay attention. This really is the Son of God.
Well, I think that's true, and that first we have to see Jesus for who He really is, and accept Him for who He really is, and accept His identity, which is obviously on display at that moment. Before we can start accepting my own or your own identity, our own identity. But even though I think they did take a big kind of a quantum leap jump in maturity there. Don't think for a minute that they had arrived totally, because you can see countless examples later on.
Yeah.
Peter, for example, Thomas, Thomas wasn't there, but still, he saw other miracles. That they still have their flesh and they still struggle just like we do. So, that's why, again, I think maybe the Lord's never shown me a real true miracle that I know of, just because it may not have been good for my growth. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like it could have been a setback more for me, because I would say, well, then I want another miracle. I'd have been like those Jews. It was never enough for them. They had to have more miracles. So I don't know. That's just a thought.
Yeah, I think it'd be difficult to really wrap your head around. Like, if you, using that same example, just prayed just ridiculous prayer and asked God, I need to be blessed financially. And you played these numbers and all of a sudden you won this lottery. You're like, oh my God, God does listen to me. He shows up. And you bank on that. And you go through all your money and you end up falling. You realize, were you really there, Lord? You know what I'm using the example of, they get fixated on something that they think God showed up. It's a miraculous change, and all of a sudden you're in this awe moment. Everything is perfect. God listened to me.
Maybe that's the way these guys were climbing up the mountain. Because they're coming out of this legalistic lifestyle. And if I do that, you'll do this. And
right.
if I keep the 633 laws, then, God will bless me. Because honestly, Tom, I think what you said about, maybe these guys are the bad guys out of the 12. Maybe they were they weren't, maybe they just needed it. Not that they were bad, but maybe they just needed it. They needed a spiritual awakening,
Mhm.
and boy, did they get one.
Yeah, and I think that perhaps the other guys, they needed to get busted a little bit because they were probably puffed up.
Mm, mm.
When they
Yeah,
looked at these guys, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But I do agree with, like we were talking earlier about your reaction to people when you see spiritual growth. There's a lot of different ways we can react. One of them, like you were saying, is like, is this the Tom Benbow that we've all known for all these years?
Right.
I don't,
Right.
and the other side of it is, oh well, now he thinks he's somebody he's not. He's high and mighty. He's a hypocrite. There's all
Yeah.
kinds of ways you can look at that. I remember having obtained some security in the Lord and not freaking out about every little thing that came
Mm.
along. People around me were pissed off at me because I wasn't freaking out when they were all freaking out. They're like,
Mm.
what's wrong with you? You're supposed to be freaking out like we're freaking out,
Mm.
and that's a weird situation to be in, but it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You remember when, I'll use myself as an example, like when I first was introduced to the Alpha series, and I'm talking way back in 89 when that was really presented to me. It was a new thing, but it was a really, really great way to my spiritual growth because I saw something that never been explained that way, or maybe it was just in that moment. But John did such an impressionable presentation to that Alpha series. It just penetrated. And there was a short period of time right after that I felt like I've arrived. I've been a little bit higher than the rest of the people that were there. In that little Alpha house out on 441 in Boynton Beach, that was a very small group of people. There wasn't opened up to everybody. It was only just to the ones who wanted to go through that program. I was
12.
one of the 12. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was one of the 12 that arrived. And I got in that small little Bible belt feeling, oh man, I'm way past these people here. Like they have nothing more to serve me. I've arrived. Then the second phase ministry opened up and I went down to Okeechobee. Whoa, here I am again. I'm getting more blessed. God's going to do something with me. It's that short period of Bible belt that you get into and you feel like you arrived until the struggle starts. I mean, you start, did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing? For me, it was different. I kind of felt like I need to stick this out and not get super confident in myself because it's not me that's doing it. It's God doing something to me.
Mm.
And I don't know. I just remember when that first light came on and you get all spiritual and feel like I got something. But I've never lost sight of the fact that the blessings, we're talking about things that God has done and proved himself over and over. He has shown miracles to me over and over. I can't deny that. There's just things that can't be explained. And I'm sure it's happened to each and every one of you. There's just things that we know it's God. It's not really us doing it. And we can just bypass that, or we can look at that as maybe that's just a real subtle way of God saying, I'm here. I'm here. I'm listening. And I know your needs. I know what needs to happen in your life. But I'm not going to give you that. I'm not going to give you that lottery ticket at one. I'm not going to let you have the whole bang in one shot. You know what I'm talking, Tom? Like to be overwhelmed. Maybe it wasn't good for us. It wasn't good for us to open up the veil and see God. It's almost like I'm going to give you a little glimpse of glory. This is what you got to look forward to. He just wants to let us know it's real. I'm here waiting. I need you to be patient. You're on this earth for a very short while. Minister and love others.
There's another point to make here. Just like the thief on the cross, that Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't based on his performance, was it?
No.
Yeah.
Was he looking for God? Was he doing anything to get acceptance and approval? Nothing.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So were these three looking for anything? They were just, Jesus said, come, and they went. And God did something for them they couldn't do for themselves. He gave them more revelation. He gave them more. Follow me? He's doing for us what we can't do for ourselves, is my point.
Mm.
Even if we're not looking, he
Mm.
makes, he's the adult, we're the child. We are being conformed to the image of Christ, with or without our cooperation.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
It doesn't matter it just doesn't matter. And there's times that I didn't want to, and he turned around and changed my want to want to. So, it reminds me of, it was Philippians 2:13, I think it was. Hang on, I got it written.
Mm-hmm.
Philippians 2:12 and 13. This is NIV. God works in the life of the believer to accomplish his purposes. The outworking of his good pleasure and works kindly comes through his enabling. In other words, he equips us to do his will, which brings him much glory and us great satisfaction. Paul is writing about working out our salvation, doing work to grow in Christ-likeness as we live out our days, waiting well for the return of Christ. But as hard as we work, we must always remember that God is the one who is working through us. This is the Amplified. For it is not your strength, but it is God who is effectively at work in you, both to will and to work, that is, strengthening, energizing, and creating in you the longing and the ability to fulfill your purpose for his good pleasure. And then for God, it is God who works in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure. For God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases him. That energy is God's energy, an energy deep within you. God himself willing and working at what will give him the most pleasure. So once again, we're back to God doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. All this revelation, all the stuff that's happening, we're just along for the ride. And then in his perfect time and in his perfect way, he hits us with another deep revelation of who he is, who we are, reality of what's really going on. And that causes our faith and trust to grow in him. That's my personal experience. And the best part about it is, it's whether I want to or not. It's whether I'm, I used to, I don't know, I'd wake up early and be in the Bible. I'd be praying religiously, and I was doing all this stuff trying to prove to God how zealous for him I was.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ends up telling me to shut it all down and go to sleep. Relax, like Tom, you've been saying, relax. Because it's not so much what we got to do. It's not, because we're human beings, not human doings. And we always think we got to be doing something for God. Martin and I have been sitting in class, and you know how when there's a lot of people and all of a sudden it gets quiet, you automatically feel like you got to be talking to fill that dead space. And so what we're doing now is we're trying not to. And we're letting the Holy Spirit go around the room. And then all of a sudden, somebody over there will just start talking about an issue. And then they'll get quiet again. And someone over there pops up with something. And it gives the Holy Spirit a chance to work instead of us always having to talk or come up with something or be in control,
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, group didactics are really interesting when you sit back and analyze them, see what really can come out of it. It's not always what the presenter puts up there. It's questions and feedback. See who's really focusing. You sit in a group, if you just showed up and you and Martin just sat down and just stared and said, okay, we're starting, and never said anything, somebody would speak up
Yeah.
because the moment of silence kills people.
Absolutely. It freaks them out.
It kills them. It's like, I'm not used to this. Somebody talk, somebody say something, and then it just comes out. But that's really cool that you're realizing and watching that before your own eyes and letting that moment of silence.
That's another point why it's so hard for us to just let go and relax, because we always feel like we got to be doing something for God.
Yeah, I'm speaking to myself.
Ron
I'm the same way. Yeah, I'm the same
Ron
way.
said one time, a couple, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, that we expect ourselves to be able to do it instead of waiting on God to do it. Remember that?
Mm.
Isn't that good? Because we do that. Because we feel like we need to be doing, especially now that you know better, right? There's even more pressure on ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the disciple wanted to build a tabernacle. You know, here he is. He's surrounded by a cloud, God. You know, you're in a performance-orientated environment. I'm just thinking he couldn't rest and enjoy the silence because his flesh was freaking out.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm laughing. Maybe I can relate to that.
No, but even in that time, we're talking about times when, like today, it's not different, but it is. Back then was difficult to just pick up your whole walk and follow this man that everybody hates. That's a statement within itself. Come with me. You know, all the leaders couldn't stand him, kicked them out of the temple. And here you are following that crowd, knowing that they're after you too. Anybody that knows him is going down, and you took that risk. What brings us to that? What brings us to that clarity? Like, I don't care what I have to lose. This is the truth. I'm going in that direction.
Brokenness.
Yeah. And today, if it doesn't feel good, well, F yeah, I'm just going to go home. I'm going to go hide between my doors somewhere. Out there, back then, you were in the wide open. You weren't running inside no house. You're hiding behind mountains and trees and hoping that, soldiers didn't find you. I always look at that as like, today is easy to escape others. Just get away from people. If you don't want to talk to people, just walk away from them.
I couldn't run away from myself though.
No.
Everywhere I went, there I was.
Yeah.
Is that a line from a movie? But it's the truth,
I think he gives us a willingness, by grace we're saved through faith, and that not of yourself, it's the gift of God. The faith to believe in the first place is the gift.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that he called, he gave them the grace to believe. That's why they followed.
Yeah.
So once again, what do you have that he didn't first give you? Nothing.
Started from nothing. Yeah.
So, right.
That's right.
So then I was reading that in Corinthians 13:5. Hang on, let me pull it up. No, I think it's in the beginning. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, we could say, and not be born again. So, in other words, everything that you're doing before we get born again is useless. So without, but have not a personal, intimate relationship with God. Divine love. without having a personal, intimate relationship with divine love. I'm nothing. But the way that I read it tonight was he's telling me the difference between being saved and not saved. Because you can have, the world says whoever dies with the most toys wins, right?
Right.
You can't take it with you. So all of that is useless. It profits nothing without being born again. And unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you. It goes back to that. But we're just existing otherwise.
Yeah.
Which is probably what those disciples were doing before Jesus showed up. They had a good job. They had a bunch of friends around them, but they had no life in them.
Well, I'm glad he didn't pick the lawyers and all the high class and
Yeah, he picked smelly fishermen.
yeah. So, but it was such a variety, tax collector. I mean, there was a variety of people that he picked.
Yep.
So there's a lesson in that as well. There's no partiality. He loves us all the same. But I can relate to the commercial fisherman more than I could.
Yeah,
the
The
lawyer.
tax collector.
Peggy Martin made a comment here. She says, I love this teaching. For me, to see how the boys in quotation, are just like us.
The disciples.
Yeah, the boys are the disciples. They're no different than us.
Mhm.
When the stomach cramp hits, they know they got to go use the bathroom or whatever. They're exactly like us. And I agree with earlier. I mean, how did they even speak? I don't know that I'd be able to. I can't even imagine seeing what they saw. And she, later on down the comments, she made the comment when we were talking about how did they know who these guys were. She said the Holy Spirit told them. And of course, I hadn't even thought about that, God tells them who these people are. It is just not noted for us to read. And when I look at this, when I heard what Tom said Sunday, I wrote a note to myself that said, what does this mean to me? Well, first thing that it meant to me was God does speak to us. This is another shining example that God will speak to us.
Yeah.
And for those Jews, they knew that, but they had to go, the way I understand it, they would go once a year and give their sacrifice, and they would be forgiven again for the next year, and so on and so forth. And there were those special people that God spoke to. They knew it. They knew that God spoke to someone, but did each individual Jew know that that God would speak directly to them? I don't think so. I think that was part of the shocker of this deal. And then don't tell anybody. When I get back down this mountain, the other 9 are going to want to know, so why'd he pick you?
Oh no, where you been?
Yeah. What have you been doing? Oh, I can't tell you. What do you mean you can't tell me?
Yeah, if you were showboating, you go, well, Jesus told me not to tell you. While his face was on fire. And God
Martin,
was talking to me in a cloud.
Martin,
Did I say that?
Yeah. now, Martin, you're just messing with me now. You know,
Right. If you had been
trying to
there,
mess with my
Bill,
mind.
if you had been there, but you weren't, so I can't.
I can't. The whole thing is just there's so many scenarios and that can go on in your head, and all of it, every bit of it takes us right back to the fact that he had this relationship. This is Jesus, Moses, Elijah, God having a relationship with three human being men that are, and she said it, that are exactly like you and I.
Right.
Nothing different.
Yep.
What a shining example of what God will do with us if we allow him.
It doesn't even matter if we allow him. That's my
True.
point.
No,
we're,
I agree.
Yeah.
It just makes it easier if we allow him. It's like that old John Glenn saying. It's like if you got the choice, you're going.
Yeah.
You just have to decide whether you're going to ride up in front of the pickup truck, or you're going to ride in the back of the pickup truck, or you can get drugged behind the pickup truck.
Yep.
Either way, you're still going.
I love that. I always bring it up, but I love the saying that John had said, whatever you're going to do quickly. Do quickly. And what he meant, I mean, there's so many ways you can interpret that. In this case, he was talking about if you're going to leave your relationship, just do it. Don't sit there and wallow in it. Make a step, make a decision. And we're talking about a marriage, a past marriage. And I couldn't get off the pot, whether I was going to stay, go. And he was like, do whatever you're going to do, but do quickly, because you're only hurting, both parties are being hurt by this. Mm-hmm. And I think he meant that for a lot of things. If you think you're going to relapse and go out and get high, go do it. See where that gets you. You know what I mean? Go, whatever you're going to do, stop entertaining it. Go do it quickly. Stop being a threat to everybody.
So
I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Huh?
But that's maturity.
I can hear John saying, so how'd that work for you?
Right. Right. But no, just look back. We all have the examples of being in that time in that place, whether it was in counseling or just knowing him as a person. His statements were pretty, if you thought about it, sometimes, I mean, Jim, I remember conversations like we would have, and you would say, I don't think he's hearing me, like almost feel rejected. Like he don't want to hear all this. And there's times when it appeared like that. Like John was very settled. Like, I'm trying to get your attention. He's like, okay, go talk to someone else. Let's see what this person's doing. It took me a long time to realize what he was doing. He's like, you have what it takes. You don't need my reassurance. Go minister to another person. That whole thing with Tony Bulletin and him, it was back when Dunklin was going on, and I was working at a juvenile program. I think I've shared this before. I had another case manager he was obviously not a born again Christian and had several beliefs. He was involved with the Masonaries, and he started bringing up this story, but he was super depressed. And he was at that breaking point. Like, he's like, how do you know God is real? I said, oh, just wait a minute. I said, I got somebody who can tell you that. And I went and got Tony Bulletin on the phone about 8:30 at night. I never been shut down in my life. Tony made me feel that small. He picked up the phone and he said, do you know what time it is? I said, Tony, there's somebody here. He goes, listen, I'm home. I'm in bed. You minister the gospel, and hung up the phone on me. I carried that for a long time. I'm like, you ministered. I'm like, how? Because I was looking for someone else to deliver the message to this man. Because I didn't know how, I was afraid I was going to fail this person by delivering, hey, look, you don't need to trust in the ring, the club. You need to trust in. I was afraid to just come out and tell them. I was afraid to minister the gospel. I was willing to let someone else do it until Tony said, you got the answers. Why don't you do it?
So you were basically drop kicked into maturity.
You're darn right I was. And it worked. It worked. Sometimes we need to be put in our place.
Yeah, man.
And that example is when I was put in my place, and I appreciate it.
So you know how the baby eagle learns how to fly?
It gets kicked out of the nest.
The mama kicks it out,
Yep.
and it's trying to figure it out. And just before it hits the ground, the mom swoops down, grabs it, puts it back in the nest. Then the next day, kicks it out of the nest again.
Yeah,
And it does that until it figures it out.
it's a great example.
So, you know, the Lord does the same thing with us as he matures us. But once again, the point is him doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. We can't mature in his grace and knowledge of the Lord and the love and all that without his revelation. We can't. And
It's becoming more clear. I mean, I keep going back at the same thing, but God doesn't need me for anything. He really doesn't. He's got this handled, and I am just in the moment. I know we talked a couple of weeks ago about my crisis, but my crisis is I'm living in difficult times, and I'm trying to be comfortable in uncomfortable positions. And if that's his settled way of telling me, look, you don't have to try to prove anything anymore. You don't have to try to do anything. I'm here and I'm going to do it. I've just kind of backed off everything. And that's what's uncomfortable, is just pulling back and like whatever I was doing a couple of years ago with clients, things have changed. I'm with a whole new team, and they have different opinions in different ways. And somehow I guess I went in thinking, well, I'm the elder. I guess they're going to lead by example. No, they don't want my example. They want to do things their own way. And I'm sitting back going, this is going to crash very bad for you, but I'm not going to let you do this without my voice. And I am more and more putting my foot in my mouth. And I'm like, you know what? You're going to do it anyway. So I'm sitting back and letting it crash. I am. I don't have, because there's nothing I can say.
And this could be the beginning of the end.
Right.
You know, like maybe it's time to retire and go on with the next chapter in your life.
Perhaps.
It's all changing.
Yeah.
The problem is because of all the fear that we're motivated with, we keep resisting the change because we're looking at the negative side of it. We're not even looking at a positive side. I speak for myself. I do it all the time. So just selling my other house and moving here. It's fear of the future. So, and it ends up being the best thing that I ever did. And now I've got more quality of life than I had. And so here I was afraid of the best thing for me. Once again. And God's always, you know, I pray about this and I pray about that and I talk to him about this and I talk to him about that and I get it off my chest and he turns around and he goes, well, let's talk about what you're afraid of. And he does it all the time because it's faith versus fear. And naturally, we don't believe. And naturally, we're living in fear. And he wants to break that. He wants to break that childlike, you know, spoke like a child, understood like a child. That's where that's coming from. We've always seen ourselves as the old man and judged ourselves according to our performance and everybody else according to their performance. Now, to be mature, to become a man, we got to believe the gospel for ourselves and for everybody else. That's huge.
Yeah.
But, you know, he causes us, he kicks us out of the nest and causes us to grow into that. Because he won't let you hang out in the sin. Unbelief shall not have dominion over you. He doesn't let it. And then the other thing, you know, with the older brother syndrome, some of them get pissed off, but the other side of that is some of them are self-pity. There's two sides of that. You know, well, I guess, you know, I'm never going to measure up. And, you know, it could go the other way also. So I come from, my background is self-pity is a biggie in my family. And it's real easy to pull that victim card and start feeling sorry for myself. I could have done it today. I got so frustrated. Matter of fact, I went on it, I mean, like 10 times. I should have gave up sooner, but it's like I was determined not to let it beat me versus letting it beat me and then falling into self-pity. Follow me? So, but then I ended up frustrating myself because I just couldn't make it happen. I don't know why it didn't work. I did everything it told me to do. So maybe it's time to just walk away and attack it tomorrow. I was trying to get it done, today.
Mm-hmm.
I got everything but one thing done, so that's not terrible, but still.
I hear you.
Well, has anybody else got anything pressing?
No.
I'm going to say no.
So did we make,
Apologies for me for having to take a call in the middle of that. It was my mom's doing poorly, and it was my stepdad. I thought, oh boy, I better take this. So sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah,
And she's
man.
okay. And she's okay.
Good.
can we make the point about that? Whoever loves is born of God and knows God, and whoever does not love does not know God. Doesn't say that you're not born again.
That's
So
right.
we need to put that point there because you can start getting down on yourself, right? We can use that as guilt and condemnation because I'm not able to do something. It didn't say we weren't born again. It just said we didn't know God. And that's the maturity level. He hasn't showed up and revealed himself enough yet, and he will.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and the stinking thinking there is that you can get so confused on this is that, well, maybe I didn't get born. I can't even do that right. So you start doubting whether you're even ever born again.
Yeah, I wonder if my baptism ever meant anything.
Right.
Right?
That sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I got baptized in a trough. That's not real baptism. Maybe that didn't count.
Right.
I'm not worthy. Yeah, I hear it.
Or the reverse. I got baptized in a pond and not in a baptismal, not in a trough at church.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, our brain does this to us.
Yep.
And
Off to the races.
yep, here we go. And about 10 seconds later, we're unsaved and might as well go back to drinking.
I did
Yeah.
the next day.
Yeah.
Sure. And then
Like,
and then we go to Romans 6 and says, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin so that grace may abound? Or we go into the licentious. We go in the ditch of licentiousness, or we go in ditch of legalism, one or the other. But they're both ditches.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mike, it's interesting. Mike Hendricks says he calls these three Brother Mouth, Sons of Thunder, and Sons of Thunder. Then he says Brother Mouth and the Sons of Thunder needed this major lesson. And it's funny, every one of us have talked about a lesson that we learned.
Yep.
Mhm.
It was not exclusive to just them.
That's what this brought to mind, and that's what it should show everybody, that when I learn these lessons, that just means I have a good father that loves me that much that he'll take the time to show me a lesson, to show me a miracle, whether it's looking at the man in the mirror and going, I can't believe that who I'm seeing because I remember who I was.
Right.
Because that memory never goes away. But I don't go back to it anymore.
Hmm. He's in the business of changing memories, Bill.
Yeah, and you can see it for a lie, see it for what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the impact it had.
No, not at all.
It doesn't have the power.
There's the question is, do you want to be healed?
Yeah.
Or you want to go around the mountain again? No pun intended.
Yeah.
But
No.
do you want to go to the top of the mountain, or do you just want to keep going around it?
Well, now usually if I go back around the mountain, it's Mount Okeechobee, which is a garbage dump.
Mount Trashmore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that mountain in the background is Mount San Jacinto Mountain in West Texas, and I went out there on a hunting trip, and it looked kind of tame enough. With a spotting scope, we could see these deer up on the top, and that flat top doesn't look very big, but it's about 800 acres of flat up there.
Wow.
800.
Yeah, and we could see, but from a distance, it looks pretty tame, and we could see these deer up there,
Wow.
So we took off after them on foot, and that did not go well. We did not get very far, and we just realized how difficult and rough and steep that mountain is, and we just decided we weren't very mad at those deer. Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, but I took the picture.
And had money for a restaurant.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Bill, you want to
Sure.
go through the people on the right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Chuck Warren, Patrick Zent, Kelly Odom, Michelle McMillan, Peggy Martins, Michael Hendricks, some hippie, I don't know, some guy, and Michael Hendricks, Carol and John Small, Barbara Kelly, and Michelle McMillan. You all were here, and for those who are just listening, we're glad you're here and glad you're a part of us. Good to be in the family.
True.
So we got Tom Cowboy Church at 9-ish. Reach Community Church in Fort Pierce, Bob Jernigan, Dave Shields at 9. They're off of US 1. They got an awesome thrift store too. So if you're in the area, you can Google it; it'll come up. And then John Howes is doing an alpha class. He's lesson 8 or 9 on Wednesday night. Wednesday night at 7. And Freedom Ranch was Sunday at 11. I think I said that already, but anyway. Jim, would you close us out? Because I don't want to get that wrong. What was it? My brain.
Lord willing, see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Will do.
Thank you for joining us. Have a great week.